Hello, everyone. My name is Gary Gomes. I'm coming to you from the wonderful city of New Bedford, and this is Gary Gomes Vedic Astrology, or Gary Gomes Astrology Locality, whatever we wish to call it. And I'm a practicing astrologer of about 32 years now. And I've been interested in astrology since I was a little kid. However, I didn't study formally until my mid-30s. And I also study tarot. I'm also a priest of the Temple of Kriya Yoga, or Swami of the Kriya Yoga lineage. And also I am a Reiki master, etc., etc. I've also served as the president of the Council of Vedic Astrology, and before that, the vice president. And I'm currently an instructor in astrology at Kepler College, the American College of Vedic Astrology, of which I was one of the first teachers. And that's an online school. You can check it out. And Direct Academy out of Holland. So, out of the Netherlands, more properly. So I've been doing this for a while. I do teach astrology for those of you wishing to learn it. You can contact me for more information. I also have opened a school, formally opened a school, and we'll be gearing up to start formal classes very, very soon. And I'm also working on a book on Vedic astrology, book 20 years in the making. A lot of false starts along the way. And I've also written articles in Modern Astrologer about astrology and CGR. I've also lectured in various places, both nationally and internationally, including self-study astrology, the Ayurvedic curriculum, the Shivananda Ashram in California, and also various Vedic astrology conferences organized by the then American Council of Vedic Astrology, of which I was a board member from 1997 onward. So, and they split into two different organizations, the college and the council, in around 2000, I say around 2004, 2003, 2004. So I've been in this field for a while. This is a little late in getting to you, and I lost a good friend this weekend. He had been with me for a long time. Paul DeRosa, who is any of you who've been into crystal expectations or been involved with the Unitarian Church, or knew him from 7-Eleven, may have known Paul. He was a very nice man, a very humble soul, and he'll be sorely missed. So that's why this broadcast is late. We were with him over the weekend, and I was with him when he passed away yesterday. So he's in a better place, but he'll still be missed. So Paul's nickname was Superman, and because he was a Superman collector and just loved Superman. So how's that great Krypton in the sky, Superman? Okay. All right. So let's get on to the news. I'm going to have a little bit less time this week than I normally do. So I'm trying to make sure I can get this to you as quickly. I also have new software, which I'm dealing with, but it works pretty much the same way as the old software does. But it gives me more options to look at. So I finally brought it down, upgraded it, and I'm going to show it to you. So when you see it, you're not going to see anything radically new. This is pretty much the same software I've normally been using. Let's see now. All right, so this is a regular Vedic astrology chart. I'm not going to, let me just stop it and start it again because I know Zoom is a little bit temperamental. Also, if you could subscribe to this channel, it would help me a great deal. It would help me present more videos to you. It would help me expand my YouTube presence and also help me set up greater facilities. But it would also mean that we can monetize some of these posts. And I think one of the things I'd like to talk about some more over the next few months is what I call remedial measures, or upayas. Stop and share for a second and start again. And upayas are essentially remedies to afflictions in a chart. So we're going to take a very simple approach this week. Actually, one of the things I wanted to do was recap some of the events. Oh, by the way, stay tuned for the book. Stay tuned for the classes. Stay tuned for special guests in the coming months. So we're going to have some really interesting people talking about astrology in the next few months, including my friends Lolita, Donatella, Burback, and hopefully we'll get Dr. Simone back. But I also have some surprise guests I'm planning to invite to this particular show. And I think you'll all be entertained and all be really fascinated by what they have to say. Okay. And these will also be people with whom I don't always agree, which I think is healthy. I don't think, I think the field of astrology is so vast, so overwhelming, so in depth, that you can get lost in the details. And I'll also give that you realize that there are other perspectives, and the people you fail to realize sometimes there are other perspectives, and the people can shine a light on certain areas that you hadn't considered. So without further ado, let's go on to looking at the chart for today. Now, one of the interesting things I think over the past week, as for some time I've been talking about attempted overthrows, not coups. You know, this is different. Although the narrative coming out of Washington right now is, in the January 6th committee, is that that there was a coup attempt, and that's the basis. That's the basis, or an insurrection attempt, an attempt to reverse a legitimate election, and through a riot, but also through other means. So that is certainly an element of the news, but that's occurred in the past. I'm not talking about past attempts at this. I'm talking about current attempts at this, and so we'll get a lot of news about that. Obviously, we'll get a lot of information about that coming to us from both media sources, and both media ends claiming the other individuals illegitimate. And again, as I like to point out to many people, the United States is in a Rahu Mahadasha. It panics. The entire idea of Rahu is to panic first and ask questions later. Okay, that's really the best summary I can give you of. So Rahu has these grand schemes, these grand ideas. It's the North Lunar Node, It's responsible for eclipsing the moon. And what it does basically is it makes people overreach a bit. So I can look at both sides and say, at both sides in this particular case, and say they were both overreaching. And I know I'm going to piss everybody off. I take everybody off by saying that, but that's basically what I see. I see the Republicans overreaching in, or the Trump faction, or the Trump administration overreaching and trying to maintain that there was a legitimate election. There were certainly some questionable result areas in the election. Whether or not that would have changed the election result is doubtful. The other thing is, though, is that on the other side, on the Democratic side, they're trying to connect the dots. And the dots aren't quite connecting. They're connecting, they're like around, but they're not, they can't basically close the deal. And I think this is where you're going to see over the next few months, basically, in that particular controversy. Unless they do something criminally, or they do something, and I think that's one of the things that they're not struggling with right now. They're trying to prove a case, which is essentially understandable, but they're trying to prove a case, and trying to make sure they have all their I's dotted and all their T's crossed. We have a Saturn Mars, so what's causing the dotted I's and crossed T's? Well, it's that Saturn Mars aspect, which is still going on. It'll be over around July, this week, later this week. But basically, or actually probably into around the 17th, Saturn goes back into Capricorn. That'll also cause what I would call a mini recession. So we're going to see kind of an economic slowdown, but the markets will be better. Okay, so the markets right now are reacting. The way stock markets work is if there's some predictable element, and there's some element they can look at and say, okay, we know what's going to happen, we can plan. So this is what I've learned and what I've observed over time. If there's some predictability, they're comfortable. They can rally, they can choose sectors that they think are going to be big. And again, you're going to see a massive amount of technological innovation over the next couple of years. I mean, just massive. But not really until 2023 to 2025. And that will be because of Saturn and Aquarius. And it will be similar to the computer boom in the 1990s. And also productivity increases I think, will skyrocket by the end of the by the time that Saturn goes into Aquarius, which will be roughly 2023 to 2025. And then you'll get what I would call irrational optimism, but we're not going to have anything like a crash or anything like that. We'll have a recession, a tempered one. I would say similar to the Clinton downturns rather than what we saw in 2007 and 2008. Now, the walk, so Jupiter's still between Saturn and Mars. It isn't a good time for new partnerships, or it isn't a good time for, let's say, partnerships where everything is not understood. Jupiter is extremely strong by degree, but it's not strong because being hemmed in by malefic planets. So Mars and Rahu on one side, Saturn on the other side. That hemming will still continue with Jupiter being aspected by Saturn within about a week. So we're going to be in for kind of a bumpy ride over the next few weeks. Also, the Mars Rahu conjunction, I was warning people about this, and I was warning people about Rahu entering into Aries a few months ago. We've seen an assassination of a former prime minister last week. We saw the resignation of a British prime minister, or the scheduled resignation of the British prime minister, and also the scheduled resignation of the prime minister of Sri Lanka. President Macron in France is in trouble because of some scandal, which I haven't fully looked into, connected with Uber. So you're going to see a lot more of these coming. I'll just mention one thing as well. President Biden's approval ratings, this was a recent poll done by the New York Times, so it's not really an it's a liberal newspaper. Joe Biden's approval ratings are down to 33%. Now, they may rise this summertime as gas prices mitigate a little bit. I don't know. But basically, a lot of people within the Democratic Party are looking for an alternative to President Biden. That usually doesn't happen unless something seriously wrong is happening. And the last time that occurred, in my memory, it occurred twice in my lifetime. It occurred when Lyndon Johnson was president, and there was a lot of uproar and outrage about Vietnam, riots in the streets, student demonstrations, etc. And the second time it happened was when President Carter was in office, and we had rising gas prices. So we have a combination of factors. So the unemployment rate, which is low right now, doesn't seem to enter into it all that much. You would think it would, but it hasn't yet. And if there's a recession on top of that, even if it's a shallow recession, you'll see increasing pressure on President Biden and people from his own party running against him. And there's also rising discontent with Donald Trump as a result of the hearings and other factors. And I think both parties, there's a level of dissatisfaction with the available leadership in both parties. So you'll have, over the next few months, definitely, you'll have attacks because of that Mars and Rahu on authority figures, and probably through October. So those things, so there'll be violent or aggressive or extraordinarily aggressive verbal attacks. Also, right now, we have K2 in Libra. That's still going to screw a trade for about another year, roughly. And Rahu in Aries will screw up faith in leadership for about another year or so. And Saturn will be aspecting it next year. So it's really going to be a tough year for leaders around the world. Saturn's aspecting Aries right now will be in Capricorn. That will signal a desire to return to a normal kind of a leadership spectrum, but Mars and Rahu isn't going to allow that. You'll probably see more violence in the streets this summer, more disruption, more interest in upsetting the apple cart from all directions, and unfortunately more ideological rigidity. I don't think you're going to see that go away for about another year and a half, to be truthful. The media right now is very happy. The sun is in the same sign with the media, so the sun has so the media has its chance to shine. The arts are a little bit hidden away. They're in Taurus, so we're all kind of a little bit greedy. The one thing I want to mention about Sri Lanka is there is outrage because of economic circumstances. Also, one thing I forgot to mention: Chinese investors or Chinese depositors are having are trying to raise protests against the banks. So nobody's really safe from this. Pretty much every country around the world is going through some kind of financial or economic issue or issue with leadership. Nobody's happy anywhere except maybe Switzerland. I don't know. But I think one of the things you look at is we have England, France. I'm pretty sure Germany's feeling a lot of economic pressure because of the lack of Russian oil. And also we have the war in Ukraine, which is obviously heating things up, and it will start to affect food supplies as Saturn aspects Jupiter, as Saturn aspects the Sun after July 17th. So I think one of the things to watch out for is this economic situation is not going to get markedly better. It's going to get a little bit worse before it kind of reverses itself next January. But investors will at least be happy. So if you're an investor, God bless you. But right now, everybody's feeling kind of aggressive and kind of angry, and it's the Mars Rahu combination, sort of like a hyped up anger. So it's like I'm just trying to think of a way to say it. A lot of people are so there's a lot of I've started to notice some positive PR coming out of the current administration side. So I'm seeing it more and more. However, it's not really settling well, except among those who are already convinced. The same is true with the Republican side. And I think one of the problems that we're seeing is there's a sharper than ever perspective that people are looking at the media through like really open eyes, saying, "Wow, these guys are just interested in drama. They're not interested in news." And I think that that's something that has been a long time developing. This isn't new. So let's look. So Mars and Rahu worry about weather events. Venus is in Taurus. Venus is relatively calm. People in entertainment are starting to feel a little bit better. They'll start to be more communicative. Within about 3 days, Venus will be in Gemini. You'll see people of that sign much more happy about things overall. Mars is going to stay in that sign for a couple of months. That's the curse of Mars. Mars stays in signs, and then it stays there for about 2.5 months, and then it moves. Then it does a lot of damage because it acts very quickly. In some ancient astrology texts, it's considered worse than Saturn because it kills quickly. Saturn is not nice, but Saturn lets you see things coming. With Mars, an accident can happen like that. Okay, so just be really careful going on the roads. If we're looking at the world, though, overall, there'll be more focus on entertainment, government will be really attacked. A lot of wisdom or a lot of good guidance will be hidden away. People are kind of down. They're starting to feel like they're getting a little bit of relief. They're traveling a lot. Definitely, that's true. And the moon's in Scorpio right now. So the moon's in Scorpio. This means the cooler heads will prevail shortly. And people will start to get a little bit more optimistic, but that won't stave off this up and down emotional field, which will happen towards the end of next week. So you're going to have the moon transiting over Jupiter by tomorrow. That's very good, but then it'll go into Saturn sign and meet up with Saturn, and that'll make people feel down again, feel kind of compressed, and then finally it'll transit over Jupiter. People will feel happy, but then people will be angry and pissed off towards the end of the week. This is kind of a regular cycle that you should see repeating throughout most of the summertime. So let's look at the chart and see where things are popping. Okay. Yeah, this isn't going quite the way I want it to. Let me see. All right, that's better. I'm going to stop the share again. This is not stop the steal, it's stop the share. Okay. And let's see where we have problems. See where we have opportunities and problems, excuse me. So down the South Pacific, it looks like near this island chain whose name escapes me right now, and the Aleutians is a Saturn, has a Rahu line and a Saturn line intersecting, so there could be some kind of a sea accident down there. And there's a Moon and Venus line going over Hawaii. Now that's not necessarily a bad sign. So, but they'll be worried about growth. They'll be worried about inflation. You know, the Moon worries a lot. It's aspected by Mars right now too, by the way. Sun and Mercury are off the Aleutian Islands, affecting Alaska. The Sun is in Gemini, so there'll be a lot of communications out of Alaska, and I'm not sure what for. Maybe in connection with Russia, because the two lines are going into Russia. And Jupiter is going down the west coast. Jupiter and Sun are intersecting, not really causing, but there may be a shipping accident out there. Let's see what happens. Jupiter and the Sun are also close to California. And as I told you before, the government in California has been in different parts of the state, not universally. The government's been under a bit of fire, and the Sun Jupiter may even cause additional fires in that part of the country. It's not really on top of it, but there's a Mars line running right through. Looks like Montana into Idaho, and or not quite into Idaho, but Montana, and I need to stare a little bit more closely. Wyoming down into New Mexico, it looks like, and into Mexico. So we can expect some violence in this belt of the country, roughly between Michigan and the Midwest, ending at New Mexico. And also some anger. There's a little Saturn line, maybe some problems down in New Orleans with the economy, and in Texas with the economy. Texas itself looks a little bit angry right now. And so you'll probably see, and this is right at an immigration line. So there may be some violence connected with immigrants. And I would say the same is probably true of Louisiana. And Rahu, one of the reasons I'm saying immigrants is because Rahu has to deal with the strange or the new or the unique. And basically, yes, so there'll be some poverty associated with new immigrants, and it'll affect largely Wisconsin, Michigan, and roughly through Missouri and down into Louisiana and a little bit into Alabama. The Great Lakes region will probably be affected a little bit by Rahu. There'll probably be some governmental attempts to seat governments up there. And I wouldn't be surprised. There's a lot of violence right now, but I wouldn't be surprised to see it happen again in that part of the country. Rahu's moving out into just the tip of Mexico down by Easter Island. There's not a lot happening in Easter Island, but it's possible there could be some kind of a sea disaster or maybe even a small earthquake there. Saturn's going through Western South America, and there's a Saturn moon line over here, and over here there's a Venus line. So we can expect some outbreaks of diseases in this part of the country. The reason I'm saying that for Venus and Moon in particular is because of the Moon-Venus mutual aspect, and Venus can actually cause certain accelerations in vaccinations. Down here, down in Paraguay and Uruguay, the Venus line is moving down, and there's also a moon line right next to it. So that part of the world will probably come under scrutiny for a bit more for entertainment than anything else. Mercury is running through the mid-Atlantic, and the sun is moving towards Azores, and there's a descendant line running through Jupiter. So actually, Brazil looks like it gets a little bit of good luck, especially in its capitals. The other thing I want to point out is there's a Mars line running up through Norway, Spain, France, England, and there's a Rahu line. So you're going to see a lot of scandals, especially over leaders within this belt over here, where Germany, Switzerland, Italy, Greece is. Probably won't affect Turkey or Eastern Europe all that much, except for one Rahu line, which is passing over Poland. So Poland's going to be in a fairly panicked state. Interestingly enough, you have a Venus, and I just want to look at the Rahu line, and going up through roughly Libya and Algeria. There's another Rahu line, so expect government scandals in those countries. Let's see now. Down into Ghana, it looks like. And there's a Moon-Venus line coming into, and a Jupiter line sort of intersecting in the Ukraine. So that may be a good sign for the possibility of some peace negotiations, some kind of trade deals coming out that will ameliorate the suffering of the war. I'm not optimistic the war will end until really next January, but I'm hopeful that there'll be at least be a ceasefire, that people will actually start looking at trade more, that older and wiser minds will prevail. And with that Moon Venus opposition in the chart, that looks possible. There's a Mars line running through India and all the and Uzbekistan and Kazakhstan over here. So these countries are going to have some problems, I think. I forgot to mention Iran. There's a moon line running through Iran, so Iran's going to be giving oil. So that's good for their economy. This line is generally good for economies that it crosses. But there will be some scandal or some dissatisfaction about it. So India will be in some problems with its government, some scandals connected with its government. As we know, Sri Lanka, which is on here, has already been hit. And also, I think this is Turkmenistan, which is really probably the most closed-in country in the world right now. Korea is not. North Korea is close, but Turkmenistan is really in a really bad shape. And so you may see some governmental scandal in that country. Finally, as we go over here, government scandal in China, lack of respect for the government and around Mongolia, and Saturn line just going up through China. China is a large economy, so it's not inherently struggling, but it's encountering some problems with its economic growth. Definitely encountering some problems with its economic growth, and it is hurting a bit. The other countries over here, we have Moon Venus lines going through Philippines, Borneo, and Indonesia, and so those countries look okay. So does far eastern China, and it looks like Taiwan. They look okay for the time being, and North Korea looks pretty much untouched. There's a Jupiter, and down here Venus is running through Australia, so the economy in Western Australia should start to improve, and so should the economy in Eastern Australia. So Australia is getting some good, and also Guinea is getting some good news for a change. As far as New Zealand goes, some potential for violence, in Micronesia. And there's a Jupiter line running through Tasmania, so that's actually good for it. So Australia, for the first time in a long time, looks like it's going to be in good shape. So you'll be hearing some good news out of that. But New Zealand, especially North New Zealand, is going to get hit a little bit hard by violence or by some kind of weather threat. And that's about it for the world. So let's see if we can. So the parts I'm worried about are essentially the entire western half of the United States. Especially past the Great Lakes and through the Great Lakes. California, I'm not quite as, and Oregon and Washington aren't quite as beset with problems as they usually are, but that Mars line does tend to indicate fires in that part of the country. Rahu over here indicates some civil unrest, and especially Saturn, some economic unrest. Venus, and let's see now, also down in Peru, England, and France and Italy and pretty much all the way over to Greece are in some kind of problems. You know, they're definitely having economic problems because of oil, but this looks like it's also government scandals too. And the same is true of Northern Africa. South Africa and Zimbabwe look okay. They don't look like they're in really rough shape. Saudi Arabia looks okay. So actually, believe it or not, it's Moscow. And so there might be some tendency towards peace overtures. Probably hear more about India over the next few weeks, and you'll probably hear more bad news coming from Malay and Vietnam and China. Okay, particularly connected with commerce. All right, so I'm going to go back to the main screen. And like I said, this is going to be a little bit shorter than normal. I hope not too short. I hope it's okay with you folks. And let's go back. Let's stop the share. And go back again to the main chart. All right. So this is the now chart for now. All right. So we have Jupiter's in the first house. So that means basically I'm telling you the truth, at least as I know it, as I understand it. Then the Rahu chart, though, does have me kind of wandering all over the place, which is pretty typical for me. But I think I do manage to bring it back to what I was trying to talk about. Mars Rahu is in the first house for Aries rising. And I think this particular pattern, this chart is, there's something wrong with the show. Let me fix it. All right. All right. All right. So just let me talk about the individual signs. The individual signs are Rahu and Mars in Aries tends to make this sign more power hungry than normal, more self-focused, a little bit less attuned to its partner's feelings. But Venus is in the second house. It'll bring a lot of money in. It'll communicate well. It'll command others. Moon's in the eighth house, so home life will be a little bit distraught this month, a little bit upset this month. And Saturn is in the 11th house, so good gains, but slow financial gains. Jupiter's in the 12th, so this sign will feel like it has to spend a lot of money. For Taurus, Taurus has Venus in the first house. This is May 15th through June 15th, not typical Taurus. Venus is in the first house. That forms what's called, this is, by the way, is what's called a Ruchaka yoga. This is Mars special personality yoga. This is what's called a Malavya yoga. Malavya was like ancient Athens was in Greece. So this makes Malavya yoga patterns pretty much interested in fine arts, in music and art. A lot of that's in a kind of a struggle in the U.S. chart right now, but Venus is in Taurus, and so it will tend to be very, very persistent. A lot of entertainment will struggle just a little bit until it hits this sign, and this sign will have trouble making itself happy because Venus also rules sixth house in this chart, but it's good for material growth. Mercury's in the second house. This sign will have good opportunity to communicate with people. The Lord of the third house is in the seventh house, so there's this attraction to morbid or difficult people in the chart. The fifth house, the fourth house has no planets in it, but there is a lot of focus on money, wealth. The fifth house has, again, children will ask for a lot of money. K2, this sign still has to be careful about illness, to be honest. Relationship partners will seem difficult or difficult to please. Work will be very hard, very rewarding. And this sign will also have new friends and new opportunities for friendships. But it will be spending a lot and it'll be interested in travel and frustrated because it can't. For Gemini, Sun and Mercury are in Gemini right now. Very good sign. And before I forget, I should have put this on early in the reading, earlier in the video. The 12th and 13th are what's called the Guru Purnima. So that's very good for any auspicious action. So any time during the day you want to do a ritual or you want to start a new activity, excellent time to do it, the 12th and the 13th. Okay? So that's, I just want to share that with you. Okay, so for Gemini has Mercury in the first house is what's called a Vajra Yoga. And some people tend to think the sun being present in the sign nullifies that. I don't. So it's very good for communications. And a lot of gossipy communication will come out. Also, there'll be a lot of communications, at least in terms of relationship life. And Moon rules the second house, so this worry about money or finances, but that'll go away within a couple of days. Third house Lord is the Sun. The Sun is in the first house, so this joint desire element in the chart. This sign wants to be well known, it wants to be noted, it wants to be recognized. Okay, so that's a large part of this sign just in general, but in terms of people paying attention to it, it absolutely wants that, especially this month, especially up until the middle of the month. K2's in the fourth, so there'll be some family arguments, some dissatisfaction with the career because of Rahu and Mars in the 10th. Ninth house, overall good luck. So if this person's at all involved with education, any kind of educational activities, it's very good for that. And there'll be gains and savings from educational activities. But there'll be this feeling that people have to get everything exactly right before they move forward, which is erroneous. So I think that'll get straightened out within about a week. For Cancer has no planets in the seventh house except for that lonesome Pluto there, which I really don't take into account. There are a lot of other things that can explain why relationships are having problems or investigating themselves right now, and it's not just Pluto. Saturn in the 8th house, Saturn seventh house, of course, that too, and so they'll seem to be relationships will seem to be a bit restrictive, but I think they'll improve in about 6 months. Sun is Lord of the second house in the 12th, so people will feel like they'll have to communicate a lot and spend a lot of money on communications and communicating overseas in order to advance. The third Lord is in the 12th house. They'll feel like their ambitions aren't being met, or they'll have to communicate over long distances. K2's in the 4th house. So again, some family disruption, some family problems. Again, children will be moody or difficult to deal with. Sixth house, there's no planet in the sixth house. Jupiter's in the ninth, the sixth lord is in the ninth, so that indicates generally good health. Saturn is in the eighth house, so that indicates restrictions or feelings of being contained. Mars is in the 10th house, a lot of work focus, a lot of work drive. Venus is in the 11th house. This sign will get luxuries or money. For a Leo, Leo has Saturn in the 7th house, so it feels like, again, like relationship life is a little bit constricting, a little bit difficult. I'm going to stop the sharing, go back to the share again. And one of the interesting things about this is K2's in the 3rd house. So the sign will have a lot of courage, but it'll have a lot of unhappiness in relationships, and it'll have more enemies within about a week. Jupiter's in the 8th. It'll have income coming in from unexpected sources. Mars is in the 9th house, so it'll get benefit from managers or from teachers, although teachers will expect a lot of this sign. And finally, Venus is in the 10th house, so career life should be going well. And Sun and Mercury are in the 11th house, forming what's called a Dana Yoga, which promises money luck to this sign. For Virgo, Virgo's career life will be accentuated because the Lord and also career over a long distance. Venus is in the 9th house, that's the Lord of the second in the 9th, so money should be good. K2's in the 2nd house, the person will feel like they can't hold on to money. Moon is in the 3rd house, they'll feel a certain sense of futility or difficulty with this combination. Saturn is in the 6th house for this sign, which actually makes it more competitive, more willing to improve itself. Jupiter's in the 7th house. There'll be a feeling like there's a lot of relationship opportunities, but you can't get to them. Mars and Rahu are in the 8th house, so there'll be some gains or legacies from property, but they'll be tough to hold on to. Overall, this is a lucky week for Virgo, but again, it'll still seem a little bit frustrating. For Libra, K2's in the 1st house. This sign will seem to have a lot of extra responsibilities, especially next week. A little bit depressed about money, a little bit depressed about arguments with difficult to please relationship partners. I'll continue for a couple of months. And let's see now, 3rd house, Saturn is in the 5th house, so probably good luck with children. But relationship life is going to feel kind of cursed. A lot of attraction towards older people, or people from a different age bracket for this sign. Venus is in the 8th house, so this sign feels like it really can't fully express itself, but it's happy delving into occult or investigative matters. Sun and Mercury are in the 9th house, very good placement for financial progress and financial growth. Scorpio has Moon in the 1st house, Mars in the 6th. It'll have that Mars in the 6th house for a couple of months. And I think what you're going to see with this sign is a lot of domestic unhappiness, a lot of worries over health, but overall good luck, good relationship luck, and unexpected earnings coming to the sign. So this sign is actually going to do pretty well for itself this month. Sagittarius has Jupiter in the 4th house, and that looks pretty good. It forms what's called a Hamsa Yoga, and essentially that's a great, so it accentuates the attributes of Jupiter, so that this sign will feel very open, very very warm-hearted. Mars and Rahu, arguments with kids, arguments with lovers. Venus is in the 6th house. She'll have some problems with money, but not but spending too much on luxuries. Mercury's in the 7th house, good communications with spouse, and spouse will be lucky for the person. Moon is in the 12th. So again, there'll be that feeling of isolation, or loneliness for this sign, just for a little while, just for a couple of days. For Capricorn, we have Saturn's in the 2nd house, so it'll bring some slow money in. It's about to enter the 1st house, so Capricorn will feel like a lot of its authority will come back. Jupiter's in the 3rd house, very polite placement. Mars and Rahu, a lot of arguments about home life again. Venus is in the 5th, though, so there's a potential for lovers for the sign if they're interested in that. And romantic involvements, although they'll be worried about relationship life because Moon's in is sign of debilitation. Sun is in the 6th house, so don't cheat, Capricorn. It may seem tempting, but don't cheat. And Sun and Mercury are in the 6th house. A very good placement for overcoming illnesses and enemies. K2's in the 10th, again, not a lot of career recognition, but that's something the sign will have to get used to over the next year or so. Then it'll get a lot of recognition. Aquarius, we're going back to the last two. Aquarius has Saturn in the 1st, has Sashi Yoga, it's a Saturn great personality yoga. So Aquarius, new ways of thinking, new innovations are strong, although again, some perfectionist traits tend to show up, and Saturn aspect in Rahu is never good. That'll change in about a week's time. Jupiter will be in the 2nd house, and will be for a while. And it's a pretty strong Jupiter. It's almost at its maximum strength. So you'll start to see some financial rewards come in. Venus is in the 4th house. Overall, good relationships with children and family. It'll be in the 5th house soon with Sun and Mercury within a couple of days. And so they'll form what's called kind of a Saraswati yoga. So it'll be very good for creative activities of any kind for any person. And finally, we get down to the 6th house. The moon is the 6th house lord. There's worry about adversaries at work. Ketu's in the 8th house. Relationship partners will seem a little bit cranky or irritable. Moon is in the 9th. That's not a bad placement. So you have the 5th lord in the 9th house. That's good for luck, although it won't seem that way. And finally, you have Saturn in the 12th, pretty soon being in the 11th, which makes work very hard. And it seems like you're spending money hand over fist, but that'll change soon. Okay, so that's it for this week. A little shorter than normal, I think. But I'm going to sign off. Be careful out there, especially if you're in urban areas. Even if you're not in urban areas, it's going to be dangerous. But chances of anything happening to you directly are pretty minimal. And I wish everyone good luck. Pay attention to the 12th and the 13th for starting activities. And namaste, and I love you all, and have a great week. Bye-bye, everyone.